Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another set of video in which we're going to continue to talk about the human resources parameters. And if you've been following the videos that I have actually posted, you have a bit of an understanding of how you can configure the human resource parameters. And we're going to continue to do that today and finish that set of series off. And we'll move on to the human resources shared parameters. So if you've been following, as I've said, you must be very familiar with the home page of Finance and Operations. So this is the home page, and for you to navigate into the human resources parameters, you need to go into the modules, click human resources. Right underneath the setup, you would see human resource parameters. So we talked about the general recruitment, compensation, and even number sequences, and today we're going to actually talk about the employee self-service. So as you click on the employee self-service, right underneath it is the information which a manager can enter on behalf of the employee. So I should be able to see all of this information in my employee self-service workspace. So for instance, certifications or courses that I might have enrolled myself into, or any loan items that have been given out to me. So like laptops, for instance, is an asset that was loaned to me. So all of that can be applicable into my employee self-service workspace and of course into my employee record itself. Any skills or project experience that I may have that I need to enter through my ESS, and of course I can even request leave of absence. That is also enabled in my ESS workspace. In this case, when an employee requests, it needs to have a workflow entered into it. So you cannot request a leave unless a leave of absence workflow is configured and enabled. And if the organization, of course, requires you to have a buy and sell, that functionality is also available. So right now I have it disabled, so you cannot see that in your ESS, nor you can request it. But we will get to see how the request piece for leave of absence works. So that's the parameters that are for employee self-service. If you go right underneath it, the setup links for employees, I haven't really seen that much used much in my implementations, but in this case, if you want to simply add an internet address to this employee, then you can do so, and it'll show up on the ESS workspace. The last few things are not so crucial. It's more of the governance piece, where you would see the display name of the employee self-service workspace. So how does that look like? So you have only two options available for it. So you either can have employee self-service or self-service. So basically what this means is that if you go into your human resources, I have it under favorites. So if I go under favorites, I see employee self-service. If I change it to self-service, you just see self-service. That's all that there is to it for this parameter. And it's mostly like a user preference based on your client requirements. And the last piece under this parameter is the address and contact information. So if you were to add the address or edit the contact information or even add a new contact information, this is the drop down menu list. So you would have to select a purpose based on your requirements, of course. You may not want to allow an employee to have a purpose of consignment. Consignments, of course, is to do with the supply chain. So this might not be applicable to you or to an employee, so why you need to change the address. So most likely the addresses have to do with home addresses, for instance, or other. That could be most applicable, or even payment actually makes sense. So under the contact information, you want to make sure that your pay stubs, for instance, your T4s are sent to a specific address, and you can probably select payment for that matter. So it truly depends on the preferences of your client. But none of these probably are applicable, but you can easily make it applicable depending on the requirements. And you can also enter new purposes. So that's a different video that we probably touch base on, but you would have to go into the organization administration for that. But right now, these are the configured out of the box purposes that you can select when you're adding a new address or creating a new contact information. So let's go into the manager self-service. Quite a few things that you would see are similar in these two parameters. One being that the certifications and identification numbers are being readily available to you. But as a manager, I want to have the ability to also view these things for the people who are directly reporting to me. So if I say view expiring records to none, all of these are they go gray and you cannot select them just because you simply have selected the none button that you don't want to see anybody's expiring records or expired records. The only two options that you have are direct reports only or the extended reports. So extended reports are the dotted line reporting that you would see someone who's on a project, for instance, with you, but they don't directly report to you. You want to see their certifications or you want to see their tests, for instance, or anything that's relevant to you that you want to see based on these parameters can also be seen. But if I were to do direct reports only, I will have to define the number of days. So I would like to see 3 days prior to the records being expired and the records being expiring. And I want to make sure that I get to see certification, the identification numbers, and probable provisions. I don't really care about screenings or tests. I would assume the HR managers were going to take care of that. So when I go to the next option, I see open positions. So I want to make sure that anybody who's directly reporting to me actually uh, shows me that if it's an open position or not. So what that basically means is if I'm on the vacation or whatnot, and for whatever reason an employee decides to leave the organization, I come back, nobody has actually told me about it, I get to see it. So I will see that it is an open position and I'll get to see who's actually exiting in my management self-service workspace as well. You can also either extend the reports. So extend reports is basically what we talked about is the dotted line reporting, or we can have both. So you don't necessarily have to worry about one or the other. Same thing with the exiting workers. So I would like to see and view exiting workers that are directly reporting to me. And I want to make sure that they are shown to me 7 days prior to their exit. And of course, you can also identify the unit, which is a drop down value. So you can go all the way up to like a full year. Normally, the organizations wouldn't really want to terminate an employee for a year unless they are contract workers, which makes sense. So it could be that as well. Same thing with the setup links for managers. You can enter a link that shows up on their self-service workspace. So nothing that I have used in my implementations, but most applicable things are the ones that we actually talked about. In terms of payment methods and benefits management, we're going to actually touch base on the benefits management module itself. So it's a very big module and relatively new to the infrastructure of finance and operations. So there's going to be a separate series. So videos we're going to talk about and how we can configure and how we can enroll benefits to the employees. But in terms of the payment methods, normally what I have seen in my implementation is that we have technical resources to build the payment methods. So different payment methods that we tend to use, which are checks or electronic payments. So these parameters are normally used for integration purposes, but our integration normally is sending flat files to the third-party vendor, which simply uploads them into their modules, and they process it accordingly. So I wouldn't want to worry too much about these payment methods unless you're actually integrating third-party vendor systems, and then you can map it down to these Boolean fields. So let's go into the employee self-service workspace. So simply, I guess access is denied. So let's try it again. So I do not have sufficient permissions to open as an administrator. So let me see what might have been happening here, because I did assign myself a user. So let's see if I can go into the workspace and self-service. Let's have a look at that. There we go. So this is me, Benjamin Martin, and this is the person who I have assigned myself because I have a user license for it, and for that reason I do have a picture of myself, and this is me basically. This is my self-service workspace. You could see that I have certifications that have expired. I don't have any time off balance because I just haven't been enrolled into a leave of absence. No timesheets because the time and attendance module hasn't been integrated with my timesheets. So that's why you don't see any timesheets here. And compensation, so you could view your compensation, a historical compensation. My total number of skills is 5, and then of course I can enroll myself into benefits from my self-service workspace. So that configuration would have to wait for future. We will configure that and then we'll get to see how that works. Let's go into my team. So my team is the manager self-service workspace. And this is where we get to see how many certifications are expiring for my team, how many government IDs are expiring for my team, and who's on probation, and are there, what's the date for those probation periods, and who are they basically as an employee and as a manager absence calendar. So that's also something relatively new. So I can click on this and view any of those employees who are reporting directly to me in terms of their leave request. So right now nobody actually has requested a leave, but if I can even select myself, I guess I haven't configured it appropriately. So let's see if their departments are here. So okay, let's try a department and see if somebody's name shows up. So it is a dummy environment, so I don't expect anything to come through. So when we actually configure the leave of absence, or when we request a leave, then we will get to see this. But this is basically a calendar that would give you a full highlight of or an overview of all the employees who have requested leave throughout the calendar year. So you can even change the dates from there. Very useful, of course. Last piece that I want to talk about is the position. And in this case, I don't have any open positions. So we did uh, configure in the parameters that if there are any open positions, I get to see it. Right now, any of these employees haven't left their position. So I only get to see that. If Nicole, for instance, might have left or she might be leaving, her position would open up and I will get to see an open position which needs to get fulfilled. So that's the whole purpose of that parameter there. And you can also view compensation of your employees. So if you go into the annual salary, for instance, you get to see the list of annual salary that has been assigned to them and their variable compensation. So this person hasn't been assigned. Gloria hasn't been assigned any of those compensations. I do see annual compensation of Gloria, so I might have clicked a different one. Actually, it doesn't look like it's been configured properties, but you get to see the 45,000 as an annual salary. In terms of the leave of absence, very similar concept. You can request a time off for this employee on their behalf, or as an employee, you can also request time off under your My Information tab. So with that, I think we kind of covered quite a few things in a very quick manner, and I think the employee self-service parameters and the manager self-service parameters, they're very self-intuitive. I didn't want to dwell too much into it just because I feel that you'll get the opportunity to explore a little bit, and that's how you tend to learn, to be honest, and that's how I learned the system. Just on the side note, if you've actually stumbled upon this, and you probably get to hear this a lot on my videos, if you are interested in getting into Dynamics 365 finance and operations space, or any other space, to be honest, because I've done so many HR implementations, I kind of know how the ATS system work and how you can get into different kind of industries. So feel free to click on the link that I'll drop down in my description, and then we can definitely connect, and I'll be more than happy to help you out and get into a different space. Thank you for that, and I will see you guys in the next video.